somewhere around 300 AD, while the Roman Empire was slowly eating itself alive, while Europe was descending into what historians politely call the Dark Ages. While the Western world was forgetting how to read and forgetting how to build something extraordinary was happening on the other side of the planet that almost nobody in the Western tradition ever bothered to write down. Asia was not in a dark age. Asia was in a golden one. And the strangest part is not what was being built. It is that the people who built it have been almost completely erased from the version of history most of us were handed in school. In 300 AD, the Gupta Empire in India contained between a third and half of the entire world's GDP. Not a third of Asia's GDP, a third of everything produced by every human being on Earth. Their cities were not accidentally accumulated. They were deliberately designed with drainage systems, wide roads, and public wells at a level of infrastructure that would not appear in European cities for another 1,000 years. And Nalanda, their great university, had a library of 9 million manuscripts, at a time when the largest library in Europe had perhaps a few hundred. It attracted students from China, Korea, Japan, Persia, and Arabia. It was the largest residential university in the history of the ancient world. The number system you use right now, the one you call Arabic numerals, originated in India. The concept of zero as an actual mathematical entity with its own properties was developed here by Brahmagupta in the 7th century. Every calculation you have ever done, every algorithm running on every computer on the planet, traces back to mathematicians working in the civilization that Western history textbooks spend approximately one paragraph on. Move north and east to China. Paper was invented here around 105 AD. Europe would not have widespread paper for another 1,000 years, still writing on parchment made from animal skin, where a single book cost the equivalent of a small farm. Movable type printing was invented in China in 1040 AD. Gutenberg's press appeared in 1440. 400 years later, the information revolution that transformed European society had already happened in China 4 centuries earlier. And Chang'an, the Tang dynasty capital, had a population of 1 million people in 700 AD. London at the same time had 15,000. The Silk Road was not just a trade route. It was the internet of the ancient world, the mechanism by which information, religions, mathematical concepts, and agricultural techniques traveled faster and further than any previous technology allowed across 5,000 miles of the most difficult terrain on the planet. And it was controlled, maintained, and largely created by Asian civilizations. The Tang dynasty did not just benefit from the Silk Road. They were the reason it functioned. The reason Western civilization eventually overtook Asian civilizations had almost nothing to do with intelligence or innovation. It had to do with geography and disease. When European ships reached the Americas, they carried diseases that killed between 50 and 90% of the indigenous population. The wealth extracted from that catastrophe funded the scientific revolution, the Industrial Revolution, and the military buildup that eventually allowed Europe to dominate Asian trade routes by force. Asian civilizations did not fall behind because they stopped innovating. China in 1400 AD had ships 4 times the size of Columbus's fleet. Admiral Zheng He commanded voyages reaching Africa and Arabia decades before Columbus reached America. They could have colonized the world. They chose not to. The people who lived in these civilizations were not primitive ancestors stumbling toward the modern world. They had public health systems, legal codes, philosophical traditions of extraordinary depth, and art and architecture that matched or exceeded anything being produced in the West at the same time. They had everything we associate with civilization. They had it first. They had it better. And then history was written by the people who came later with guns and ships, and the confidence of those who had never been told they were not the center of the world. Remember Chang'an, remember Nalanda. Remember the 9 million manuscripts. The ancient Asian world was not a supporting character in human civilization. It was the lead. We just inherited a version of history written by people who needed it not to be.